An entitled jerk of a real estate agent tricks me into buying a property that absolutely was not what he described. So I decided to get some revenge by exposing the fact that he was cheating on his wife in a way that I honestly never expected. Here's what happened. Now, I want to start off by saying that I am by no means an expert or professional at revenge, but I am a patient person. 7 years ago, I was lucky enough to be able to buy my own place. I had saved for 10 years, worked my butt off, and I was so happy to be able to have a place to call my own. Now, being a single person on the mortgage meant that I had to make compromises, and one such compromise was buying a property on a shared block, which, by the way, is a lot cheaper. Where I'm from, this usually means it's on a strata title. For some, that's a bonus, as it means there's a communal fund for repairs, typically with insurance being cheaper as a collective, with other things like maintenance being taken care of. Strata titles also come with a lot of bylaws and restrictions on what you can and can't do. Now, I am a pretty private and introverted person, so having to deal with people and have limits on how I can live is honestly a big no-no for me. But nonetheless, I took my time and I found the perfect property. It was a shared block but a freehold title. The only thing was that I needed to pay public liability insurance for the shared walkway on the property, and this was split equally between the owners. The real estate agent is local to my area, and there's also about 3 degrees of separation between us. He has friends who are friends with my friends type of thing. I didn't know him, but I knew of him, so that sort of felt good. About 5 months after I moved in, I get a knock on the door from the landlord of the property next to me to discuss the insurance. And for me, this is not a problem. I asked for a copy of the policy so I can have some kind of record. Well, it gets sent through, and lo and behold, it's for a strata insurance. I was incredibly confused, and after much back and forth, the property isn't a freehold title but a strata title. I called my lawyer who conveyed the title, etc., and he was seriously dumbfounded. But over it all, he did the right thing and made things as right as they could be. I arranged for a meeting with a real estate agent, and I even brought emails and printouts of the ads that they had, with all of them saying that it was a freehold title, as well as emails between my real estate agent and my lawyer specifically discussing its freehold status. Despite it being an absolute black and white, he refused to accept any fault or offer anything to make things right. But with all things considered, I don't begrudge that. He is looking out for himself, and I honestly get that. However, I would never forget about this. I did enter into mediation with a real estate agent, and all I asked for was when the time came for me to sell, they would do it or cover the cost. I thought that was reasonable, but they flat out refused and offered me $1,000 to go away, which I also refused. I had the options to pursue them legally, and I was advised to do so by the mediator, but ultimately I decided against it for a few reasons, with one of the main reasons being my health at the time. So I planned and plotted about how I would get back at this absolute jerk of a person, and it was then that I settled on this. I found that his personal Facebook page wasn't set to private. I saw some photos of boys on tour trip that he went on a few weeks prior, which was about 5 to 6 months after I bought the property. I also found his address through a business registration search, so on the anniversary of the sale, for 6 straight years, I sent him flowers with the following note: "Dear real estate agent, remembering you on this special day. She has your eyes. Love, Ellie." They varied ever so slightly over the years, but always had "on this special day" and some weird inference of a love child and a desire to reconnect. I also from time to time arranged for postcards and letters to be sent from another country, and it was the country that he was on tour in, always signed with "Love, Ellie" at the end of it. Well, fast forward, and I learned about 3 weeks ago that this guy recently divorced. He lost his home and is no longer working as a real estate agent. And the reason for all of this is that his wife had somehow found out that he cheated on her. The story I was told through a friend of a friend basically described how he would get weird gifts and flowers every year, all on the same exact day. His wife apparently finally put 2 and 2 together and realized what the date was, and he admitted to cheating on her. Now, I didn't mean for this, but it turns out a year before I bought my house, he had gone on holiday and came back with a nasty virus you can only get from having just a little bit too much fun, if you know what I mean. And apparently he gave this to his wife, but somehow convinced her that it wasn't him. So as such, our special day turned out to be right around the time he was deep in some trouble with someone who wasn't his wife 1 year earlier. So at this point, he's apparently lost his house, he's lost half of his retirement savings, and also his business. I do feel a little bit guilty about all of it sometimes, but then I'm reminded that he's a scumbag, and that karma, just like me, is a patient, spiteful, and vengeful jerk. Oh man, I love this story because this is not at all what you expected. You didn't plan on this happening. Like, this really is like one of those situations where you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna mess with this guy, but then you come to find out, wait, he really did cheat. Like, this is crazy. This honestly is so awful. I feel so bad for this guy's wife, but also this guy absolutely had this coming. He was treating you like garbage, and he tricked you into buying a property that, guess what, wasn't exactly the way that he described it. Like, that is false false advertising to the highest degree. So good for you for getting some awesome revenge, because this guy absolutely deserved to get taken down. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to give up my seat on the plane just so a father could sit next to his son? Because after they tried to guilt trip me, I doubled down, saying that I'm taking my seat and that this man had better behave himself. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I'm a 29-year-old male, and I boarded my short flight, which is about 70 minutes long, which was a 2-to-2 seating arrangement. I'd booked myself a window seat, and when I got there, I saw maybe a 7-year-old boy sitting in my spot next to his father in the aisle seat. The opposite row also had his mother and his sister sitting there. Now, although this happened less than 24 hours ago, I was so exhausted that I don't remember the conversation word for word. I pointed towards my seat, and the father asked me if I would mind swapping so they could all sit together, and that their seat is in the row behind it, but I said I would only swap it if it was a window seat. Well, when he said it was an aisle seat, I straight up said I wouldn't swap it. Now, to give context as to why I wanted the window seat, I like to look out, but mainly if I need a nap. That is unlikely to happen if I can't rest my head against the window. Other than that, I hate aisle seats a lot, and I hate them almost equally, if not more so than middle seats. People in the drinks trolley keep bumping into you, and I just can't understand why anyone would choose to sit there, because it really takes the trolley bumping into you once to change your mind. This guy then looked at me and said, "So do you want to sit next to your son?" I responded by saying, "I don't care, I just want the window seat." At this point, this guy stood up and got his son up out of my seat. He then said to me, "You are not a very nice person." I just responded by saying, "It's none of your business and please be polite." He tried to make some stupid rebuttal, but all I could say to him was, "Just be quiet and behave yourself." Now, I just stood there looking at him serious, and I think he was trying to shame me initially, but he didn't respond with anything else after that. His wife was also watching this the entire time. Now, when somebody in the row behind saw it all happen, he offered to swap and sat next to me, so they did eventually sit next to each other in the end. Now, for all I care, they could have been sat 20 rows apart, or even booked a new flight. I had zero investment in this or their reasons. They can ask and I can say no, and that honestly should be the end of it. And I don't like that they basically tried to force me into swapping with me. If they care that much, then they can book their seats in advance like everybody else, because that absolutely was within their capabilities. Oh man, I can't stand when people do this. And thankfully, I have not run into that myself, but I do have friends who have had this situation, and honestly, it is so awkward. Like, here you are just trying to get in your plane seat, and these people are trying to like guilt trip you into giving up your seat. And it's like, wait a second, just because you can't book seats together doesn't mean this is somehow my problem. So yeah, I don't blame you for not giving up your spot. This guy was clearly trying to guilt trip you, and that, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. My idiotic company forces me to wait all the way until like a week before my trip so that I can reserve a hotel for a business trip, resulting in me not only having to buy a hotel room for like twice the amount, but also the entire accounting team getting in trouble for forcing me to do this. Here's what happened. I work remotely for a small company of about 100 employees, and based on my contract, I have to return to the office for a week 4 times a year, and the last time I went back was in November. In the contract, it's laid out that my employer pays 100% of the hotel as well as any gas or airfare. Normally, this is an extremely uneventful routine. It's a mid-sized Midwestern city with not much to do, so it is what it is. A few months before I went back up, we had our financial audit, and one thing that was pointed out to our accounting department was a lack of controls on purchasing. The way it used to be was every manager and supervisor had a company credit card with $1,500 as the balance, and as long as we stayed under that limit, we didn't have to do any kind of purchase orders. After our audit, my accounting team decided to make purchase orders 100% their focus. Going forward, it doesn't matter what it was, what the situation was, or if you didn't have an approved purchase order, you could not make the transaction. Now, all of this happened in early October, right as I'm trying to book my hotel for my on-site week in November. Normally, I have freedom in choosing when I go on-site, but I was requested to go that specific week by my CEO and CFO, as we were launching some strategic planning and they wanted me on-site. So I put the purchase order in for the hotel, and I don't hear back anything. I then forgot about it for a couple of weeks and then remembered mid-October that I still don't have a hotel room booked. When I initially made the request, it was about $550 for 4 nights, but looking again in mid-October, it's now up to $700 for 4 nights. I then look around and notice that same week as I'm supposed to go up, there's a concert in the same city, followed by a big college sporting event in that town. So I send an email to the accounting people that I need to book a hotel. The rates are going up and room availability is going down. Well, after I did that, I get a strongly worded email email back saying that everyone has different priorities and my purchase order will be addressed once all the other ones have done it before me. So at this point, I sit back and wait and keep checking every other day and keep seeing the prices go up and up. I also send a weekly email asking if it's approved yet, and I still keep getting absolute silence back. Then finally, a week before, I email my accounting team with the CFO included, saying if I don't book a room that day, there wouldn't be any left, and I would not be able to make it up for the strategic planning work. About 30 minutes later, I get back an email that says word for word, "You are authorized to reserve a hotel room for 4 nights." So I think to myself, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and book it. And you know that room that was $550? Well, it's now $1,200. So I book it and I move on with my life and I don't think anything of it. Well, last week, I got around to uploading my credit card receipts and submitted my expense report, which included the $1,200 hotel stay. I then got a call from the CFO today just exploding on me, furious about where in the world I did stay that cost so much money and what I was thinking. Well, I very calmly just forwarded the original purchase order as well as all of the emails that I sent saying that the prices were raising. At this point, I had dead silence on the phone as he read through the email chains and just said, "Oh, are you kidding me?" And then he hung up. Well, at the end of the day, all supervisors got an email stating that the purchase order system was being shut down until they could figure out a better way to manage it. Because honestly, the way they were doing it was a complete nightmare. Yeah, this really was so stupid. Like, this honestly could have been fixed so quickly. You mean to tell me that these people would rather you wait until the prices doubled instead of just taking the room and being like, okay, I've got the room and everything's taken care of? Like, seriously, these people are complete morons. It literally took you tagging the CFO just to get them to make any kind of move. So yeah, good for you for maliciously complying and essentially putting them in their place by showing how stupid they were, because this policy, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for ruining my family's New Year's Eve by refusing to join the fun, all because I didn't want to be the designated driver ever again? Because after doing this for literally 7 years and then refusing to do it this year, my family is saying that I betrayed them, and now I feel like a jerk and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 26-year-old female and I really need some serious perspective. I'm starting to think I might be the jerk, but I still feel like I'm in the right. Every New Year's Eve, my family has a big party at my aunt and uncle's house, and every single year without fail, I end up being the designated driver. Don't get me wrong, I love my family, but it's starting to really bug me. It's been like this since I was 19 years old, even before I could legally be allowed to drink. Now, I don't drink that much, maybe a glass of wine or a beer, but I definitely don't get plastered. I'm fine with driving people home if they need it, but for the past few years, everyone just expects me to not drink so I can drive them back. Every year is always the same. "Oh, you can drive, you're not drinking anyways." And I always just say yes because I don't want to let anybody down. Well, fast forward to this year on New Year's Eve, and I told my family ahead of time that I wasn't going to be the designated driver anymore. I just wanted to enjoy the night, have a couple of drinks, and not be responsible for getting everyone home. I even told my cousin, who usually gets really sloshed, that I wasn't driving this year, and she was completely fine with it. When I got to the party, it was the usual chaos. People were drinking, laughing, and having a good time, and I was enjoying myself, but at around 11 o'clock, my cousin came over and asked if I was ready to drive everybody home. Well, I then reminded her that I'm not driving tonight, and I'm actually just here to enjoy the party. She looked at me like I was crazy. She said to me, "Oh, come on, you always drive, don't be a jerk." And it's like, what are you talking about? I tried to calmly explain to her that I wasn't being a jerk. It's just that I wasn't going to be the chauffeur anymore. Then my aunt overheard it and pulled me aside. She lectured me saying, "We all agreed last year that you would be driving. You know how much we rely on you. Everyone else is too tipsy and Ubering is unsafe. Just drive this one time for the family." I felt a ton of pressure, but I refused. I told her I'm not their chauffeur, and I wasn't going to do it again just because no one else could figure out their own ride. My aunt then got upset, saying I was being selfish and that we were family. She said I'm the only one who doesn't get too drunk, so it makes sense for me to help out. I told her I had already had 3 beers, so I wasn't even legally supposed to drive myself. And that's when I finally snapped. I told them it's not my job to be their designated driver every year, just because I'm the only one who doesn't get blackout drunk. They needed to figure out their own rides this time. Then I got up and I left. I felt bad walking out, but I didn't want to be a doormat anymore. I then spent the rest of New Year's Eve at home, watching Netflix and eating leftover pasta with my boyfriend. My family texted me and called me dramatic, selfish, and saying I ruined the night. They said I was being super sensitive and that everyone was disappointed in me. And right now, everybody's demanding an apology out of me. And by the way, I got home perfectly safe by Uber. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I'm still incredibly frustrated. No, you're not the the jerk. These people suck. You told them ahead of time you're not doing this anymore. You literally just wanted to enjoy the party and not feel like you're responsible for everybody else. And I can completely understand where you're coming from. Like the first few times, I'm sure you're probably thinking like, okay, this is fine, I can help out, but it's not a big deal. But now, after all these years of doing this, literally 7 years later, these people are still trying to be like, oh, you'll drive us home, right? Do this for the family. This is what family does. It's like, no, I don't think so. The second you told them that you're not doing that this year should have been the moment that they found someone else to take care of them. And that person, by the way, does not include you. So no, you're not the jerk at all. These people are being super selfish, and they're trying to blame you for something that they clearly didn't plan for. Am I the jerk for refusing to sign my neighbor's waiver, which would essentially let him run tractors through my backyard so that he can build his new pool? Because based on what they've given me, it honestly seems very sketchy, and after he freaked out when I said no, I honestly don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so last Thursday, my neighbors approached my wife regarding a use of yard waiver since they don't have the clearance to move excavators and bobcats to their backyard to build a pool. The waiver states that they need 10 feet of clearance, and 4 of that would be into our yard based on my measurements, and they say they would repair the grass to its original state. Now, I have an irrigation system and internet lines which run beneath the area which would be used, and the neighbors were leaving for Florida and asked for a 48-hour turnaround. I spoke to the pool company on Friday, and they said they need 10 to 12 feet, and they need the waiver because there is a good chance the ground will be totally torn up. Now, it was my wife's birthday this weekend, so this situation was not on the top of my mind, but my neighbor knocks on the door Saturday afternoon asking for some kind of response. Well, I kindly explained that I'm not comfortable signing the current waiver, especially given the typos, the lack of notarization, and the ambiguities regarding repairs. He then takes this personally and storms out of the house, complaining about how much money he's going to lose. Well, today the project manager from the pool company knocks on our door asking what they can do to resolve this. I told him I don't really want my yard torn up, but at a minimum a new waiver needs drafted, and then I would possibly consider it. He then says we have an electrical easement which runs 1.5 feet into our yard in the exact same spot that he wants to use, and he would just call for access. Well, I checked the design and the deed to see that there is not an easement running through the area that they need. And after that, this guy leaves, and this situation is literally still up in the air. So am I the jerk for refusing to sign my neighbor's use of yard waiver? Because right now, I'm not sure what to do. Wow, this sounds incredibly sketchy and incredibly rushed. Why on earth would anybody in their right mind try to go to their neighbors and be like, oh wow, you should sign this without like looking it over. We need this signed quickly, so why don't you hop to it? It's like, what are you talking about? This is not enough time to make that kind of decision. And it sounds like these people are going to destroy your yard. They're not going to just like dig it up. They're going to make massive holes and completely ruin everything that you have, especially if you have lines underneath your ground. Like, who knows what kind of damage that's going to do. So no, based on the typos and the way you're getting treated, in my opinion, there's no way I would ever sign that. They better figure out another solution, because what they're presenting to you, in my opinion, sounds incredibly sketchy. An entitled jerk tries to insult my appearance in French by heavily implying that I'm ugly to his children. But what he doesn't know is that I know French as well. So I decided to get some revenge by exposing the fact that I knew exactly what he was saying. And I've honestly never felt better about getting back at somebody in my life. Here's what happened. I'm a 28-year-old female, and I live in a 50-floor high-rise building in downtown Vancouver. And to start things out, I just got back from a sweet sunset run. A family entered the building with me and held the door for me. They were speaking French together, but I thanked them in English, which is the main language in British Columbia. We all walked towards the elevator, and I ended up in the same one as them. Now, this was a couple and their 3 kids, all boys around 8 to 10 years old. Now, I am bad with ages, but they were the age of being able to speak and think enough to understand what is right and wrong. They were chatting in French, and since that is my mother tongue, I could understand everything they were saying. As we were getting up more than 30 floors, the dad turned to his kids and asked them in French, so is she pretty or not pretty? When he said this, my brain instantly froze, thinking, oh my gosh, could he be talking about me? Well, one of the kids quickly responded by saying, she's not pretty. I stopped breathing for a second, realizing now fully that it was truly me they were blatantly judging right in front of me. I then, sadly enough, froze. That's mostly how I react when situations are just unbelievable. With just a few floors left before I could escape the awkwardness, I had a choice to make. I could let it go or seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for perfect linguistic revenge. I'm not the confrontational type, but I couldn't let this slide. But I kept my cool though, and as I exited the elevator, I turned back and said with the most sassy French accent I could give, have a good evening. The look on their faces was absolutely priceless. I left quickly, but in hindsight, I wish I had made direct eye contact until the doors closed. I've dealt with rude comments before, but this moment it was a chef's kiss. I've always dreamed of a situation like this where I could use another language to surprise someone who thought I couldn't understand them. But I'm just saying, keep your language skills to yourself, as you never know when it could come in handy. Learning multiple languages is 100% worth it, if just for bamboozling people like that. The mom stood there silently the entire time, almost like she wasn't really present, and I couldn't help but wonder if she faces this kind of behavior from him as well. There are a few Airbnbs in my building, so I'm guessing they were some kind of tourist, because I never saw them ever again, even though I would have loved to have a second chance at revenge. Wow, the guts on that guy to be like, hey kids, tell me if this lady's ugly or not, right in front of someone in a country where French is their second language. Like seriously, this guy's an idiot. First of all, why would he do that and try to set up some kind of precedent with his kids to be like, oh yeah, we judge women in public. It's like, you do have a wife, you know, right? She's literally standing in the corner, probably wishing she wasn't there. And based on that reaction alone, I'm willing to bet she deals with this all the time from this guy. Like he's probably some absolute monster behind closed doors. But I really think the way you handled this was perfect. I love the fact that you didn't take that sitting down and you did not allow this guy to make some awful comment at your expense. So good for you for putting this guy in his place, because he absolutely deserved it. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.